Chill here with Sirius Dallas Moon, and this is an energy reading. Um, what came up for me this morning was no amount of love can justify rape. And I don't know who needs to hear that or under what circumstances. Another thing that came to me was, and I'll tell it as a story. Somebody had somebody in the family that needed particularly kidneys, that is associated with Libra, trade, justice, and Venus, and relationships. And that person may or may not have been involved with crime. And then the result of that, because that had to do with sexual boundary violation, whether it's trafficking or energy siphoning, like I don't know. But the result of that was that the people that survived, they saw advertisements of people that need kidney. And this came about as a theme in the last couple of years. And they say, wait a second, at hospitals, they kidnap people, they torture people, they do what they did, they do human trafficking to people. It's not safe to even try and be a donor. And somebody may have even addressed that. And so it kind of looks like, on a worldly scale, we are in a year to do with completion, 22 midheaven. Moon day, moon hour. Moon is 16 degrees Aries. Mercury is 20 degrees Scorpio direct. Venus ingressed to Jupiter. Venus ingressed to Sagittarius. Sun is on Antares. And I guess that's why it was the no amount of love can justify rape, because now what it created, a situation, was that now is year 9, is completion. And the topic of kidneys came about several times, along with organ harvesting. And this is where the, how should I say that? What was done was something so severe that now people that could have checked if they are compatible to be donors, had they had the ability to trust that they won't be harmed, raped, trafficked, kidnapped at the hospital, are now raising this issue to the surface because they cannot be legit donors. And when it comes to organ harvesting, because organ harvesting is done by trauma, then the person that receives the organ, it having less chances to absorb the organ and more chances to get a lot of ailments because they have to repress the immune system. And then it would mean that they would need to try again and need to try again. And that feeds off of a certain um, system or systems of systems that do not have the best interest of humanity. Okay? And this was something of a completion year. There can also be something may have been from somebody was told that something is from an animal and it wasn't. Like there can be so many things. And kidneys are to do with justice and balance. And Saturn exalts at Libra. Now we are in year 9 in the world of completion. So there is something of completion to do with that. And those that try to get the kidneys by organ harvesting, by human trafficking, they find out that those kidneys did not absorb if they get them. And now the people that could have if they trusted hospitals, going and seeing whether they can donate, are afraid to go there because the system is so corrupt. So I woke up with no amount of love justifies rape. It is, there is something overall in the coming timelines that is setting the tone differently. And this is why we're nearing a timeline that could be a world war and could be not. Okay? Because in those world wars, what changes, other than the currency, is the entire value perception of people. People understand. Now, Venus is exited Scorpio and is coming to the sign of the expanding fire. She brings those values now that she's transformed, understanding what's underneath her values, maybe even transform even deeply her values, the way she balances things. And then is the fire that expanding. It's spreading this value. And it's a burning flame. So, and another thing that came up is that to be actually loved, not as a bait, not as something that's supposed to provide something, whether it's sex or information or whatnot, is something that's imperative and something that was missing with the elite. Not only with the elite, with the low class and the high class altogether. A love that is actually loving. And that has to do with the themes where the morals of people are changing at this time. And it is towards a love that is actually loving. And that has to do with sexual sovereignty. This particular, I'm not saying that there will be a war because the war is simply happening when people did not understand it in peaceful ways. Okay, the transition from Libra to Scorpio that can be seen as the continuation of negotiation by other means can be seen as the people that didn't get that they shouldn't be raping in Libra will get that in Scorpio. And this story about the kidneys and about the fact that somebody is now raising the topic that to go to a hospital to donate kidneys, to check if one is eligible, is something that cannot be trusted because the hospitals are rapey. And the issue with the kidneys to begin with has to do with rape. Okay, the kidneys are the ones that produce the water of the Amrita. Okay, in the feminine um, reproduction system is the water basically that come out with an orgasm, but it's the water that come out with an orgasm, and they look like piss when it's not an orgasm. Okay, when it's not willing consent, they look like piss, and when they try to program, it's not the amarita, it's actually piss, and that is being produced in the kidneys as well. So, and it's to do with the health of the kidneys. Okay, to reabsorb that into the body is actually one of the practices that we learn when we talk about sex positive practices of getting acquainted with our bodies. Now, another issue that comes up is the issue of the clothing and the unusual genitals. Okay, and even with unusual genitals or no genitals, um, we have to understand that the origin had to do with rape, and the curation and the antidote has to do with willing consent, honoring sovereignty, even if one doesn't have the genitals. Okay, and that is, and it's a love that is actually loving, a love that is not a bait, a love that is not to, okay, for to provide information or something of that sort. Um, okay, this recover is a there are many things around this timeline that, if after the Second World War women got the right to vote, and what did we had in the Second World War? The biggest ideology, it was the age of ideology. The biggest ideologies, the biggest artists, the biggest psychologists, because they were rapey, they could not prevent the war. They committed the biggest atrocities and irrationalities. A Jewish, and I need the name of the organization again. I know the lady that published that is actually a Jewish Zionist lawyer, and she published this a while ago. Yes, the beginning of the 19th century, the Jewish crime organization, and it's coming from a Jewish Zionist lawyer, okay, um, will traded 80,000 young girls and women, also men. Okay, I want to please watch the recent episode by Annika Lucas with Sven Kohl. He was survivor of such organization, may not be Jewish, but global network. Um, and he was dressed up as a girl. And this was from poor towns in Poland and Galicia and Russia. Um, those things were also happening to the elite bloodlines that were supposed to be serving as sex slave. And the book by Annika Lucas, The Quest for Love, describes this story um, after the war that has persisted after the war. And it is exactly pointing to the timeline that we are today. Um, okay, they were raping them in the ships. They would send a lover boy, something that is known in Netherlands, and they would rape them to crush their soul. They were arriving to Argentina where a lot of Nazis went later, and they would work as prostitutes. This organized crime, were Jews, religious Orthodox Jews, um, which today would be considered Haredi Jews. And basically, they cooperated with the Nazis. So they are a part of creation of the Holocaust. And the Holocaust led to the creation of the State of Israel that only acknowledged Holocaust survivors in around, I think, the 50s. Before that, they were considered the lean Jew. And when they needed blood or donation of blood, they murdered the ladies to have blood. Now, of course, donation of blood is better absorbed by a person that donates in comfortable conditions and so on and so forth. But this was bloodletting rituals that these Jews participated in. And this is also why Israel has never been completely sovereign. Bless you! My mom just sneezed. And my mom is a year younger than my country, okay? So, um, this is definitely something that Israel will have to tend to, but it's also a global issue and it pertains to the war. By the way, Israel has ascendant on Spica, which has to do with Libra, which also has to do with kidneys. And one of the reasons it was difficult to litigate Israel, it's not because of the Holocaust, but because Israel was, as we will find out, one of the lesser evils. And that is with the atrocities that Israel, including the genocide that was committed in Gaza. Okay, and according to the UN's considered genocide, so we will soon find out that Israel was one of the lesser evils. And that was what was making it challenging to litigate. Ascendant Spica means fairness in trade and injustice system. And it means something that to take this down, they would have to address justice worldwide. And most of these crimes are older than the State of Israel. So they have to address the origin. And while Israel has to stand for its declaration of independence, which was consecutively violated, there's a testimony in Hebrew of a woman that is survivor of human trafficking in Israel by Israelis and got acknowledgement from the state. And she says people think that it's something that happens to people that come from other countries or go to other countries, but here it was done in Israel by Israelis. And um, she's sharing her testimony still in Hebrew, um, and basically that is a part of that connects to that energy reading. Um, so, and it connects to the timeline of the war, because this war, and we have going to people like Rasia Tasio that share the prophecies of Master Ben Saduno. Okay, the forces that operate by what they call purity, which is basically trafficking, and decide that only children can have children, okay, because only they are the virgins, okay, they are behind a lot of the rapes and the getting children pregnant to extort money and by raping them. And and as the children grow older, those that survived, they try to locate them and to traffic them and to use them in organ harvesting. um, and we understand that with the kidneys, the water that comes out during orgasm in the female reproductive system, the amarita, okay, that is not piss, it is connected to willing consent. Because in the programming is not amarita, it's piss. And and that has an innate quality that cannot happen in human trafficking when, okay, and this is, okay, it cannot happen in human trafficking. And if it happens, it cannot be used for human trafficking because it's the water of truth, basically. It is, even when they talk about orgasmic birthing, it's a part of the amarita that washes, it's the true baptizing that washes the baby upon being born when it's natural birth. I know most births were done to rape, and most birth, and we have IVF, and we have the people that were born with no genitals, and so on and so forth. Okay, um, at the same time, this issue is important because the origin was violating basically that amarita, the water of conception, and the orgasm that is actually willing. And that is to do with Libra, okay, the kidneys, and the a sense of timing, menstruation, but also fairness in trade and in juristic system that has been corrupt, the odd scales, okay, um, because of those things. Now, there's nothing particularly Libra now, so I don't know why this is coming up. Can we have it's something around the eclipses? Oh, because the moon is around there where the eclipses in the Libra Aries were, so it's activating those eclipses. Then in very pent eclipses, um, because the war is about purifying the water, is purifying the world from anything rapey, but also the industries around rape. And yes, there can be many more deaths, but this particular one, by those that are not aligned with the message. The application for people for assisted suicide on mental crisis conditions was mainly the people that went through rape, and even in childhood, that applied successfully to assisted suicide. Okay, no amount of love justifies rape.